Hello, this is Akhil Chandel, and in this video, I will be presenting an analysis and a critique for the academic paper titled Self Awareness in Software Engineering, a Systematic Literature Review. The paper has been written by Abdessalam Elhabbash from Lancaster University and Maria Salma, Rami Bahsoon, and Peter Tino, all from University of Birmingham. The paper was presented at the Transactions on Autonomous and Adaptive Systems in the year 2019. In brief, this paper tackles with the concept of self-awareness in computer systems, which recently has been gaining a lot of attention. Self-awareness has been deeply researched for enriching autonomous software systems operating in dynamic environments. The paper then tries to investigate the adoption of computational self-awareness concepts in autonomic software systems and motivate future research directions on self-awareness and related problems. As the name suggests, it is a systematic literature review to compile the studies related to the adoption of self awareness in software engineering and explore how self awareness is engineered and incorporated in software systems. The concept of self realization is new and is not well discussed or researched. This leads to a lot of gaps and inconsistencies in the concept, which has been the case here with the concept of self awareness. From the beginning, there is no consensus on the definition of self realization. This creates a big problem because if a concept is not defined properly, any additional attributes to it may become useless. As everybody perceives the concept in their own way, their application of this concept would also be different and won't be consistent. No systematic studies have been performed to summarize and characterize approaches to self awareness in computing and their contribution to systematic engineering of self adaptive systems, as well as to show a unified framework of how self aware software systems are engineered and evaluated. Both these problems restrict any substantial progress being made in the research and application of self awareness. As discussed in the previous slide, this problem is a crucial one as it makes the research done in the field to date unorganized and unreliable. As the paper states, the research in this field has been ongoing for a decade now, but still, a substantial headway has not been gained. Thus, this problem still is relevant. Before the formulation of any type of concept or a solution, the first step is to define it and define its boundaries. Without a proper definition, the objective for the whole concept is lost, which is the case right now. Even right now, some researchers use the term self awareness and self adaptable interchangeably, which makes it more confusing. Before the authors of the paper, the researchers have been trying to define and put fixed boundaries on the concept of self awareness. Most researchers try to come up with an analytical framework for the proposed concept and its application. There have been researchers in the field trying to define motivations for the concept and coming up with the approaches and practices which can be applied using the concept of self awareness. Most researchers try to propose an application of the concept of self awareness, but there are a very few researchers which define an evaluation method to validate the proposed usage of the concept. Now, I will briefly discuss the idea of the authors of this paper. The gaps that were discussed in the previous slides are the main motivators for this paper. With this paper, the authors try to compile the data from all the studies which they review and try to give a quite representative state of the art of the current research in the self-aware software engineering topic to identify the accomplishments so far, the pending issues and open problems. Authors reviewed 865 studies, out of which 74 were taken for the systematic literature review. The authors start by defining the selection process of the studies. They define the review protocols by defining the research questions which would be used as a baseline for the review. Their review questions consisted of questions like how to define and characterize self-awareness, what motivated the application of self-awareness in software engineering, what are the sources of inspiration for its engineering, in which software engineering practices and software paradigms is self-awareness employed, what are the approaches for engineering self-awareness? How are self-aware software systems evaluated? What are the working real-world applications adopting computational self-awareness? Once the research questions are defined, the authors review all the studies keeping these questions in mind. Then the analysis of the data collected was done and shown on some tables and graphs. The main contribution of this article is the systematic review and the investigation of the adoption of computational self-awareness concepts in autonomic software systems. This review and representation of analysis data help in classifying in which direction the research is going in this field. In comparison to existing studies, this review tries to take into consideration all studies and researches which have been done so far in the adoption of self-awareness in a self-adaptive systems. Unlike other studies, this paper doesn't try to propose any application or framework for the concept of self-awareness. Rather, it tries to give a representative analysis of all studies being reviewed in a very unbiased and objective way. Also, this analysis helps in finding the gaps in the research being carried out. The findings can support researchers interested in future research for advancing self aware systems. The reported challenges can guide the researchers to direct their future work accordingly to look for solutions to fill the mentioned gaps. As this paper is where the authors review other studies and try to represent it in a way which could help find shortcomings and direct the future research work in this field, there is no evaluation technique or methodology which they employ to validate their findings. This is one of the major shortcomings of this paper. Lack of an evaluation mechanism makes the finding of the research paper questionable and unreliable. Finally, I would like to say that the paper is well structured and written in a way which can be understood by anyone. Representation of data through the use of tables and charts has been done in a good way. The sections of the paper were well thought out and relevant to the topic. One of the biggest critiques about the paper is that it lacks any evaluation of the findings of its paper, which makes the findings questionable. Also, the paper just presents its analysis in a representative format without giving any suggestions or improvements which can be done. Another shortcoming in the paper is that it doesn't clearly comment on its usability. It is not very clear how the data represented in this paper can be used to direct future work. The paper also becomes vague sometimes as the authors use the terms self awareness and self adaptive interchangeably, creating more confusion. Also, I believe the paper could have tried to explore more towards finding a proper definition of the concept of self awareness, as a proper definition would help remove most of the gaps in the area of the field. In the end, I would like to say that the paper is a comprehensive study and is informative in nature. Thank you.